In this tutorial, we're going to be covering how to use data build tool. If you're interested as to why someone would want to use data build tool, I have attached a link to an article below that explains why someone would think about using dbt. And I also have attached links to this article and the GitHub repository containing all the code for this tutorial. So let's get started. So this is a very simple project, and the data we are dealing with is customer, order, and state map data. Customer, as the name suggests, just a list of customers and their information. Orders, the list of orders that the customers placed. State, this is a mapping table from state code to state name. What is our objective? Our objective is really simple here. We are just going to denormalize customer and orders table. So we join customer and orders using customer order ID, and we map the state code to the state name using the state mapping table. Excuse me. In order to follow along, you need three tools: Docker, pgcli, and dbt. Docker, we use Docker to run Postgres instance. You could also do that without Docker, but I prefer Docker because it makes everything easier to install and change versions, and it's used for a bunch of other software as well. And you have pgcli, which can be used to connect to your Postgres instance, and dbt, because this is a dbt tutorial. Let's get started. Oh yeah, I think I have the Docker container running already, so this will work for you, and you could just type in docker ps. We can stop this, right? We can docker stop the container, docker remove the container. Let's take a look at this docker run command. So this docker run command basically starts a Docker container, names it pg local, opens 5432 port with the username start data engineer, password as password, database as tutorial, and it sets it up as version 12.2 of Postgres. So, all right, so you have Docker set up, and it's up and running. It's open in 5432 port. Great. Let's test it out. So you can connect to this instance using pgcli, connecting to localhost, 5432 port, start data engineer as the user, and tutorial as the database name. Our password is password. Let's take a look at the available schema. So you can see here we have the public schema, which is available by default, but once we are done running dbt, you will have our dbt schema up here. We can come back to this at that point. All right, a quick introduction of dbt. So as you might know, dbt performs the transformation part of the ETL pipeline, and as such, it expects that the raw data already be present in your data warehouse. How dbt works is it works by having a bunch of select statements, or as in dbt terms, it's called model. And these select statements can reference other dbt models. And when you run dbt, it actually figures out the dependency and runs them in order, so you can have your transformation done properly. You could also run one single model at a time, or a model and its dependencies. So it offers you a lot of flexibility in recreating tables. Let's get started. So you could just say dbt init. This comes with dbt tool, your project name. Let's call it simple dbt project. It's really useful because it sets up the folders for you, and you could just start creating your models there. So if we go to that, so you can see the folder structure here. You have readme, it's a markdown file of readme, analysis, data, dbt project, macros, models, snapshots, tests. All right, let's go over them one by one. So analysis is a directory where you could store scripts that does analytical reporting. But one thing to note there is it actually does not get run, but it gets compiled to queries that you could just copy and paste it in another SQL IDE or SQL terminal to get your output. Data, you could store some seed data here. Ideally, you would want all your data to already be loaded in the data warehouse, but you could store some small data sets like mapping tables in here. So that's what data is. dbtproject.yaml specifies how your project operates. So it has a lot of settings for the project, which we will see in the next step. Macros contains a list of functions that you could use throughout your project. We could create our own and just put it there. Models is where you will store all your SQL scripts or models. And snapshots, you can store model snapshots here. Tests, you can store your tests here. So let's take a look at dbtprojects.yaml. All right, so these are comments. You have project name, versioning, which is similar to versioning in a software package. You have profile. Profile denotes how you connect to your database. We will see that in the next step. And you have source, analysis, test, data, macro, snapshot. These are the same things I explained here. So if you look at the folder structure, you have the data, macros, models, analysis, tests, and snapshots. This is just a mapping for dbto to understand which ones are source, which one is analysis, which folder is test, etc. You also have target path and clean targets. So when we actually do dbt run, it compiles all your SQL models into actual SQL scripts that are run in the database. Those will be stored in the target folder. You'll also have your frontend file stored here, which will be used to display the dbt frontend. The last one is this section. So this section you can specify options for your models. So what this means is in the models folder for your new project, you could apply certain configuration settings. So for example, in here it says new project example materialized view. So what this will do is it'll look for models folder and example folder within that, and all the select SQL models will be views. So in dbt, a model can either be a view or table. You can set this up as you require, but table is materialized and stored as in the physical data, whereas views are created are basically select queries that are run each time. So for our project, we are gonna have our own version of dbtproject.yaml, basically changing the name to tutorial and profile as well to tutorial. But one thing you can notice here is within our models file, we are making everything as a table, not as a view. So all our models will be created as tables in the database, except for models which are under the staging folder. They will be created as views. So just copy this over. Alright, so we have our dbt profile there. Now we also need to copy over the data that we have. Yeah. So I have attached a link to the data below. It's also available in the Git repository, but I have already downloaded it, so I'm just gonna copy that over. Simple. Yeah, I don't need the star. There you go. Okay, so we don't need the examples folder, so let's go ahead and remove that. Alright, so let's create two folders within models and call them staging and mart. Basically, staging is a area that you store your raw data in. Can be S3 or Hive or whatever, but since DBT requires that you have your stage data within the database, we are gonna create staging models as well. So let's make those folders. So we'll store some staging models in the staging folder, and our final denormalized data model is going to be in the Mart folder. Okay, so if this is the first time you're using DBT, if you take a look at the profiles.yaml file, you will have something similar to the one shown on the left. Basically what this is, it's a way of connecting to the database that allows you to connect to multiple different databases depending on your environment. So typically you have dev, user interface, user acceptance testing, which are staging, and production database. So you can specify the profile, which if you remember from earlier we had set to tutorial, but here it's a default because that's what comes with DBT. And you can specify multiple environments, and you could also specify which environment to connect to. But for our case, we're gonna have the profile as tutorial, because as you remember, we had set up our profile as tutorial here, and we only have dev environment for now, and we say like just connect to the dev environment. These are the configurations to connect to our running Postgres instance, and we say like use a schema called dbt tutorial. So dbt will actually create a schema called dbt tutorial when it's run. All right, now let's get started with staging. So let's if you look at our data, you have customers, orders, and state. In this scenario, we actually have to load in our seed data into the database first, and then stage it, and then run our final model on it. So when we load in our files into the database, it actually is named the same as the file name. So when you load in these seed data, it'll get named as customer table, orders table, and state table. And that is the reference we are using in this customer stage. So we need to stage the customer data. In this select statement, we are not doing any transformations because it's typically the staging data or the raw data. So let's keep it like that. So you create a staging file for customers, customer.sql. So if you're familiar with the common table expressions, this should be straightforward for you. You're basically creating a temporary source table and using that to select certain columns into customer, stage customer, and we're doing a select star. So this is how DBT expects our data models to be. You could do any sort of transformations or joins here. We will see them later. So this is our staging customer. Similarly, we do staging orders, and we also create a stage table for our state map. I don't know what's happening here. Oh, I think it's because I misspelled models. Should work. Great. Okay, so now we have our staging table set up. One of the key factors of DBT is built-in test support. So you could define the schema, and when you're defining a schema, you could specify column level test cases. So if you look at the example on the left side, you'll see the table name, or sorry, the model name, and the field name within the model, and what criteria they should satisfy. So here we are saying customer unique ID should not be null, order ID should not be null, and should be unique. And here, if you see, we are saying state should only be this set of allowed abbreviations, and I think this is Brazilian data set, so these are the states in Brazil. So let's copy over that. So you usually store these in a file called schema along with the data models. Sorry, this is YAML. So if you look at this, you're storing it in the staging folder along with the other data models. So I'm going to go here, stage that. All right, so that's good. So now we have our staging data model set up. It's time for the final denormalized customer orders data model, and the logic is on the left side. So we are loading in stage customer, staging order, staging state into temporary tables, and we are doing a join to get our denormalized table with a bit of transformation, simple transformation, which just converts delivered status to 1, otherwise fills in it with 0. So let's copy this over. Let's create a customer order SQL, but this time in the Mart customer. All right, so we have our customer order set up. It's time to define the schema for customer models. Again, similar, we store this along with the data model, so this schema will be within the Mart folder. So if you notice this, we have a new field called description. So since DBT has a UI, you could actually look at this description through the UI, and you could search for them and anyone can view them. Great. So we have everything set up required to run our DBT. So let's check if there are any errors using DBT debug. Okay, there's an error with dbt project.yaml. I think I know what it is. I think we didn't create it, so let's go ahead and create it. Let's see what the error is. It is actually in there, so target. Oh, that's right. I named it DBT profile. It should actually be DBT project. My bad. So let's rename it to DBT project. Okay, so let's debug again to see if there are any issues. Great, no issues. We should be good. The next step is actually to load in RC data from the data folder. Ideally, you wouldn't have to do this because all your data, staging data, should already be in your database. But since this is a toy example, this should be fine. So you do dbt seed. It's loading in the customer.csv data file into the customer table. And similarly loading in orders table. and the state table has been loaded in as well. Alright, so now we can actually run our dbt command, our dbt pipeline. So what this will do is it will actually look at all your data models, create them as tables or views in the database. Great, so you have created staging views, staging customer, staging order, staging state, staging customer orders, and actually staging customer orders, it's a table. So you can see it here, create a table, create view. So this is really helpful when you're debugging something. You can see which one failed and debug appropriately. So now all our dbt runs have completed, but let's see if our data is as expected. We can do that using dbt test, and it runs all your test cases, and everything seems to have passed. So that's great. Great. So the next step would be we can take a look at our data using directly from the database. So let's go. So let's look at the schemas. Okay, so we have dbt tutorial that's created. So let's do a select. Great. So you have this is your table actually existing in the database that dbt was run on. So you have your customer unique ID, order status 1 or 0, and state name. It's no longer a state code, but the actual name. So great, we have successfully run dbt pipeline. Dbt also has a front end, which is actually really cool. So, and it can be used by anyone, and they could just like go search for stuff there, so they don't have to bother you or anyone else. It's actually docs. I think I typed in doc. That's weird. Oh, dbt docs generate. So it generates the documents. It's writing catalogs. Great. So now let's take a look at our folder structure. So you see there's like so much more right now. So everything you did was here or here, but it has created a target folder with the corresponding SQL scripts and test queries. So this will test for accepted values, this will test for not null, and then you have your staging SQL queries, and you have your final SQL queries. So you could actually take a look at them. So let's take a look at one of them. So target, compile, tutorial, mart, customer. So you can see how our references are replaced by actual table or view names. dbt does that for you, so it actually builds the data lineage for you using the ref that you had specified in the select statement, like these. Alright, so let's deploy the front end and see how it looks. dbt docs. This is actually my favorite part because I think it's pretty cool. Alright, so you have two projects and database pane. Let's look at project. It contains all your models, your raw data, and yeah, it provides your details. Who's the owner? Is it a view or a table? What package, dbt package project it's in? What is the actual relation in the database? It also provides like a table column information, and it provides you the source that you had typed up and what it was compiled to. So if you take a look at Mart, you can see it's a table. You can see the source and what it was compiled to. You could actually also look at the database, and you could see the description that you typed in the schema.yaml file. So anyone can deploy, and they could just like figure out how something was built. And a really cool feature is this lineage graph. So if you go to customer orders, click on this lineage graph, you'll be able to see how customer orders was built. I really like doing this just for fun. So you can see like customer goes to staging customer, and it gets built into customer orders. Yeah, that's what is here. So now that we have covered a very simple project, it's time to stop the server, and I'm gonna kill my Docker containers. Again, the link to the code repo is in the description. I'll also leave a link to this article, and yeah, thank you, and